This holiday season, we all wish for hope and healing. Children and families who spend their holidays at the hospital deserve a reason to believe in first steps, in giggles, high fives, and hugs. For 150 years, Children's National Hospital has provided world-class care and groundbreaking research. Please donate today to help patients and healthcare heroes this holiday season. Visit childrensnational.org/holiday. That's childrensnational.org/holiday.
Fright Night is a talk show with published authors, writers, and content creators discussing both the creative and technical sides of writing, as well as the industry surrounding it, from novels to screenplays to comics and more. And now, here's your host, author Travis I. Sivart.
Thank you, Cogsley. A number one announcer if I've ever heard one. Welcome to Right Night. I am Travis Sivart. I am your host, and I have a list of things that I need to do that I forgot to pull out. But let's go with this. I'm going to introduce myself, tell you a little bit about tonight's topic. Tonight's topic is focusing on conferences and conventions, or perhaps conventions and conferences. I like to think of it as C&C, which is like D&D with less Dungeons and Dragons and more fucking nerd fandom, yeah. All right. Robert looks confused already. We'll get to your intro in a moment. You can express your confusion. While we're introducing ourselves, I would love for our chat to go ahead and let us know what creative project you're working on or what you've published or anything along those lines. Okay, I am Travis Sivart. You can find my books on Amazon or just Google my name. I write fantasy and sci-fi and have published, I guess, just over 36 books at this point in time under 5 different names, one of them being my own. Now, we'll go ahead and turn to my friend and editor, Tara, and let her introduce herself next and pass it to Robert when you're done.
Hi, my name is Tara Moeller. I am the Dreamer-in-Chief at DreamPunkPress.com, or just DreamPunk Press, at www.dreampunkpress.com. And I also have my own blog where I share what I write, what I read, and what I learn. So, and that's at www.taramoeller.com. And Robert, it's on you.
Hey, I am Robert Turk. I am an author and a game designer. Published a crap ton of books at this point and games. You can find my work at wicked-clever.com. You can find me on Amazon, Drive-Thru RPG, and your local favorite gaming store.
Awesome, guys. Thank you. Now, a couple of things about the show. For those of you listening to a podcast, we do have a live chat audience that we interact with. We're going to hear this noise, and that means Travis wants to read some comments out of there. So if you guys are talking, finish your thought or let me know you've heard the bell, and then when you're done, I'll read off whatever comments, though sometimes I just sneak them in without the bell. Other than that, for our chat, we're not necessarily going to read off every single comment you guys put into chat. It does have to be relevant and or amusing, preferably both. So besides that, let's see what else we got going on. I think we're ready for the topic. So, conventions and conferences. This is something I know each of us have done a lot, and I would venture to say you guys are actually more experienced at it than I. So we each have our own experiences and gone for different reasons. How do you think we should start this, guys? Should we just kind of start how we got into it, what we like best about it? What's the great hook for this topic?
I have no idea. Dead air. I think maybe start with, what's the cool stuff you can do at conventions?
Go ahead,
why
Robert.
go to a convention? So I'd say my favorite absolute thing about conventions, and I'll preface this with, I have not had one now in over a year because they all had to shut down.
Right.
Like everything shut down. So, but my favorite thing about conventions when we had them was meeting people from all over the world actually would come up to my booth or my table and talk to me about my stuff, talk to me about their lives and what was going on. And it's just this huge sense of community that you can't really replicate, no matter what kind of tools you use online, even with Twitch, even with Discord. That whole face-to-face interaction, that mass of people coming together for a fandom, it's amazing, and that's a great feeling. My second reason is it usually does not rain indoors in a convention center. Whereas outside shows, festivals, I no longer sell books at outside festivals because people don't buy books in the rain and your books get soggy. And yeah, so I'm pretty much all conventions, indoor stuff now.
So
what about you, Tara?
I mean, I met both of you at conventions. I mean, that's why we're friends now. So that's, I think, the big thing is you meet friends. And you meet friends and people that share an interest that you have. And you learn about your favorite fandoms, your favorite books, movies, TV shows, games. You meet other people that enjoy them. You meet the creators behind a lot of them. And it's fun. You meet your people, if you know what I mean. People that you're comfortable with, that are comfortable with you, and that maybe accept you a little bit more than, the regular office drones do.
Yeah, you kind of realize you're not in a bubble. Even as a creator, even as a writer, which is often a solitary experience.
Yes.
You get out there and you meet other people doing the same thing. And there is a lot to learn from other people doing the same thing that you are. And that's, I don't know about all the conventions you all go to, but all the conventions I've ever been to, granted, we're all there to make a buck. I mean, that's why I go to conventions, is to sell books. But it's not this like kiosk in the mall kind of rivalry where my little Radio Shack kiosk has to make more money than your sunglasses kiosk. We're all there sharing trade talk and helping each other out. And somebody's booth falls over and everybody runs to put it back up because there's a sense of community that everybody wants everybody to succeed because we're all in the same sort of fandom. We're all doing it. And sometimes you forget that when you're inside your writer's head in your bubble at home, sitting at your desk, that yes, you're a human, but there's also lots of other humans out there doing the same thing. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yep. And, I admit it was like only 15 years ago that I got to attend my first convention. And basically it was an anime convention that my kid wanted to go to. And said, "Hey, Mom, can we go?" And I'm like, "Sure, I'll take you." And I took them and another of their friends, and oh my gosh, we all had a blast.
Yep.
And from then on, I was like, "How did I not know about these?" And I know why. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, and then I was in the Navy, and that was not a Navy thing to do. Although it is now. It is far much more acceptable now.
Yep.
But yeah, once I found conventions, it was like I said, it's like you find your people.
Yep.
And it was an anime convention, and I fell in love with Squid Girl, which my kid finds absolutely hilarious. That in many ways, that is still my absolute favorite anime. And we just moved on from there. I've been to steampunk conventions and really, found people like MarsCon, the local ones.
Mm-hmm.
Went to Awesome Con in DC. Haven't been to a big Comic-Con yet, but it is now on my bucket list.
Yeah.
So.
That's funny that your first convention was an anime convention. My last convention was my first anime convention. I was a little bit of a convention snob there for a while because I was like, "What? Anime convention? I didn't think had anything. I didn't fit," is what I felt. This is not my people. I don't quite fit into this anime thing. I don't watch anime. I don't really. Teen Titans, I don't think counts. That's like.
It does.
Oh, that does count. Okay, well, I do watch Teen Titans.
Depends
I love
on
Teen
which
Titans,
version.
But both of them, actually. I didn't like the new one at first, but now my kids have got me hooked on it. But I went to the anime convention, Ohio, And it's not spelled like the state Ohio. It's spelled some other funky way with a Y in there. But it's in Ohio, which is why they call it OhioCon. But it was great. And the people there, I'm like, well, these are my people. These are the same people I see at toy conventions and comic book conventions and Renaissance festivals and gaming conventions. They're just, all the fandoms interconnect. And it was an amazing convention. Yeah. So yeah, don't write off a convention like I did for years and years, thinking, oh, those aren't my people. If you're interested in the geeky stuff, they are too. Those are your people.
Yes. And I want to segue a little bit to conferences because they're a little bit different.
Yeah.
And where conventions, is the geeky side of things, the fun part, the part where you find inspiration. Conferences are the other side of things if you're a creator. And there are conferences for whatever type of creative you are. And last week, and this is why I was so excited when Travis says, hey, conventions, let's talk about that. And I said, yeah, and conferences too, because I was at a conference last week, the Women in Publishing Summit. And a conference is where, again, it's your people. Everybody's there to learn and to share, but it's the other side of the creative aspect of things where you're learning the business part of things. You learn how to find an editor sometimes. If you're brand new to this and you've got a manuscript and you're like, well, how do I find somebody to edit? Do I really need an editor? What about formatting? How do I get my book in a bookstore when I self-publish or into a library? Which is my big thing, is I learned a lot about getting books into libraries. As I told Travis, I'm a little bit high off of this because I'm so excited because I learn stuff. I love it when I learn stuff. And I have been going to conferences for 20 plus years, which is why I'm really surprised that it took me so long to discover a convention. Because in a way they are, again, very similar and you find your people, but it is in the business side of things, supporting thing. And it is still very similar, like Robert said, at a convention, somebody's booth falls over, everybody runs to pick it up. At a conference, when you meet that newbie that's there, you can tell if you've been there for a while, and you just automatically, there'll be like 10 seasoned veteran writers sweeping them under their wing to make sure that they know their way around, where to go, and welcome and invite them so that they have an opportunity to learn new stuff. And you can always find something new because it's changing so much.
When I first went to conventions, I went there because it was a living library, a living encyclopedia of the knowledge I wanted. And also, I didn't go for the fun. I didn't go for the shows. I didn't go to buy things. I went to learn. Because here was a group of people.
This holiday season, we all wish for hope and healing. Children and families who spend their holidays at the hospital deserve a reason to believe in first steps, in giggles, high fives, and hugs. For 150 years, Children's National Hospital has provided world-class care and groundbreaking research. Please donate today to help patients and healthcare heroes this holiday season. Visit childrensnational.org/holiday. That's childrensnational.org/holiday.
Now, something I did learn is apparently I've done a lot of research before I ever went to conventions, and everybody's knowledge varies, and a lot of the stuff that I sat in wanting to learn, apparently I already knew a significant amount of what was out there. Something else I'll let people know about conventions, sometimes the people on the panel are put in there because they needed somebody. I remember one panel I went to about Twitter and how to effectively use Twitter to promote yourself. Not a single person up there. One said, I came in here because I actually wanted to learn from the other moderators or the other panelists. Somebody's like, I was in the hallway. They needed somebody. They asked me to come in. I have no idea. I don't even use Twitter. And the third person was like, So, yeah, that kind of became a group discussion, which that's what you do at these things. You flex. Down the road, what I love about conventions now is basically what you guys were nailing at. It's the people. I go for a good conversation and to see people I like. Now, I still enjoy a panel now and then, whether I'm on it or sitting in the audience. I approach it a little differently. I don't set my expectations high. Instead, I look for that hidden Easter egg or that little gem of knowledge I don't have. And that's how I approach.
Sure.
So if you're knowledgeable going to these things, hoping to learn something, go looking for that one tidbit that you didn't quite know yet. On the other hand, if you were kind of brand new to it all, just bask in all the stuff that's there, I always try to buy myself something a little special, you know, and talk to people and definitely see a show, especially since Ren Fairs music was what I loved going to, and I followed that up also with conventions. So let me throw a couple questions our way, and I'm going to throw like 3 or 4 questions at us, and we can kind of bounce back and forth. First of all, Andrea Lechat asked, thoughts on virtual conventions? Are they harder or easier? Do you prefer in person or virtual? Don't answer yet, because there's more. I'm also going to say, let's talk about the types of conventions or conferences, back and forth, and what the differences are between them, what we find different. So, and this is a fair question also, a follow-up to her previous question. Andrea asked, can you give personal attention to patrons at virtual events like in-person events? So I'm going to go ahead and... Go ahead, Robert.
There were a lot of opportunities for me to do virtual conventions this summer. All my big ones ended up going virtual. Gen Con went virtual. That's the biggest gaming convention in the United States. Essen, the biggest gaming convention in the world, went virtual. Pretty much everybody was going virtual, trying to figure out how to make it work.
Right.
I opted out of almost all of them. I picked up one because I was supposed to run a very special version of one of my role-playing games at it, and I didn't want to let those people down. But as far as that personal attention, I did not find it. Like, I even tried to attend some virtual conventions, and while it was better than nothing, it wasn't... It was like the self-guided tour on a museum's website. So not even in the museum taking the audio tour to see the exhibits, you're on their website reading the information about the exhibits. So I did not personally feel that connection at all. I got it with the people playing in my game, but that was it.
There was one of you, I think it was one of you guys I was talking to, said you went to a virtual event. Robert, it might have been you. And after the event was done, the panel or whatever you had attended, people hung back out in the chat room for like an extra hour beyond just talking. Was that one of you guys I was talking to about that? Maybe not that.
I didn't talk to you about it. I have seen it happen on Discord virtual conventions that tie in Discord. People attempting to recreate that sort of hallway chatter in the Discord chat. The difference I find there, it's very hard to have a smaller conversation. Like in a hallway, in a physical place, you can focus your attention on one person and the rest of the conversation becomes noise behind you.
Yeah, MarsCon had a little mini con on, and I participated. The early virtual cons I tried to participate in were very disappointing because, again, it was like, you know, you put your they put your information up somewhere, and it was a website people got to kind of scroll around. And they had a couple of, video presentation stuff, and it was, yeah. But I think the platforms, when the pandemic kept going, came through. I know that this little mini MarsCon was mostly for people that were already in, steady people in the MarsCon group on Facebook. They did it on Facebook. And Facebook has some good tools now. And in some of those panels, and it may have been, I mentioned it wasn't quite for an hour, but it was a 20 to 30 minutes after in some of the panel rooms after, you had some discussion. And it wasn't just chat. There was chat going on, but it was like Zoom. So your panelists were there, like, on folks' screens, able to talk. And I participated in a couple of them. And when that finished, the chat kept on, because the chat didn't go down, but the screens did, because another panel came on. But the chat was its own thing, and people kept chatting, and we kept talking in the chat and being able to share. So it was like, you know, that conversation after the panel, you got to kind of have that. And it worked really well. And they had their tea party. Everybody was on, and it was like a Zoom, and everybody kind of set up their table on their own with their teacups and their tea. And we all had, you know, a tea party like they always had at MarksCon. So, but it was a learning experience, because they had rooms set up that you could go to, but they didn't open until it was time for the panel. And some people didn't. It was really exploratory, I think, even for the folks that were running it. And I think in future, there may be virtual aspects of live cons in the future that people can attend.
Yes.
Well,
it's not the same as an in-person con.
Something conventions wanted to do before the pandemic was live stream panels simultaneously, so people who couldn't make it there could attend the panel. And
yes,
yeah, that's something I hope to see them continue, because then you could buy your virtual ticket like you do to TwitchCon or whatever, and you could just go to different channels or stations or whatever, however they end up setting it up and figuring it out. This is one of those things when people are asking me about conventions and panels, and I hope this doesn't sound, it probably will sound, this is what we do on the show every time we go on. We are a panel. So when people are like, hey, are you going to go to this con or that con? I'm like, this is what I do every week of the year. And I have it here, which doesn't mean I don't want to go to a convention. But, you know, I think something else, there's two sides to the convention. There's the front side where you pay for your ticket, you pay for your pass, you walk through, you talk to people, you watch things, you participate as the audience or the interaction. The backside is the people that come in and work. And they work a 12 to 16 hour day. And they set up and they break down and they run from place to place to place. And you don't realize when you see them in the hall, they're going somewhere. It might be the bathroom, it might be food, it might be a panel, it might be get a nap while they can. Andrea says some events are too people-y. But the point is, when it's a different experience, and you have to realize these people that you want to talk to. And I've been that person also, where I've been at a Ren fair, I saw one of my favorite performers, I'm like, hey, you got a second? And they're like, nope. And they keep walking. Now, I've had people just like shut me down like that. I've had others going, I'm going somewhere. If you want to walk with me, we could talk. Which, by the way, if you're working an event, do the second type. I realize...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I realize we all want to break away. We have things to do or want some private time, because it's funny how many creative people are horribly introverted. Even your performers that go on stage in front of hundreds and hundreds of people, they're just like, stop talking to me. Yeah. And we have to understand that. Me. Yeah, they're human beings. They need these breaks. They need the quiet time, or they need to get to somewhere. So
yeah, but I would counter that, just to kind of back up your second option there. If you're working at a convention, if you're being paid to be there as an entertainer, or you're paying to be there as a vendor, as an author, whatever, and somebody wants to talk to you, you're on. It doesn't matter if you're walking to the bathroom, you're on, and that's your job.
Right.
So yes, take option 2. Say, I'm headed to the bathroom, but I'll talk to you on the way. Let me pee in private, and then I'll talk to you on the way back. Like, because I've been in the same situation where it's just like, no, hand in the face, boom, keep going. And whether or not that's a sale they didn't get, they have now, at least in one fan's eyes, tarnished their entire brand with that microsecond of an interaction.
Well, Andrea also mentions working there, be nice because you represent the event. And that can influence you being brought back. So keep that in mind. Because, yeah, you are working there. And as any public figure, and you are a public figure, you have a bit of an obligation to the public. But as the public, you have to understand they're human beings. So just balance it, no matter which side of the equation you're on.
And we all have bad days sometimes.
What's that?
And as a female, I want to add something. If you're comfortable, do that. Let's walk and talk.
Yes.
I have been at convention and in my steampunk getup and had shadows of like older men. And it's like, can you not follow me everywhere? So if you're attending a con and you're a fan of whatever, author, performer, artist of some sort, be mindful of how you're coming across to them as well. Don't make them uncomfortable.
There's been times I have walked up to Tara's table to run interference where she didn't even realize what the person was insinuating.
Yes.
And
sometimes I get it and sometimes I don't. It depends on if I'm tired, which the one part I remember. And just before you had come up, I kind of caught on to what was going on, and I was like standing because my kid was there. My kid was behind the table, and I'm like blocking the table. So the guy, like there's me between him and my kid, and then Travis came up and
This holiday season, we all wish for hope and healing. Children and families who spend their holidays at the hospital deserve a reason to believe in first steps, in giggles, high fives, and hugs. For 150 years, Children's National Hospital has provided world-class care and groundbreaking research. Please donate today to help patients and healthcare heroes this holiday season. Visit childrensnational.org/holiday. That's childrensnational.org/holiday.
At Capella University, you're in control of your education. With the game-changing FlexPath format, you can set your own deadlines and move at your own pace. The faster you move, the more you save. Visit capella.edu to learn more.
Between me and him and was kind of running that interference, and we finished packing up and Travis walked us to our hotel room, which I appreciate, which is why I'm saying, if you are a patron of these, be mindful of how you're coming across to someone that you're a fan of.
Right.
And also just to share, because Morven was at one, that is my kid. And they were, older teen, young adult at the time. And this young kid came up to their table and said, can I hang out here? And Morven's like, sure. And this kid was like just almost clinging to Morven. And they'd gotten separated from their older sibling, and there was a man following them around. So once Morven figured that out, Morven's like, hey, why don't you sit down and we're going to chat for a while. And
here's something else I'll tell you. A lot of folks who are familiar with conventions or Renaissance fairs, I like to throw Renaissance fairs in here because they're really just a sort of convention, aren't they? And I love them.
Yes.
There is a certain group of people who have a certain lifestyle, which is very acceptable amongst consenting and acknowledging adults. And that's great. But not everybody goes to a convention to get picked up and get laid. A lot of people do, but not everybody. And gauge that carefully, folks, because there's been times where I have just been oblivious to that I was being picked up. I thought I was just hanging out with some people, and then later they're like, you coming in? And I'm like, what? No.
Yeah.
And then they wouldn't speak to me again. I'm like, I didn't even know. It wasn't on my radar. So if that's what you're looking for, just gauge it carefully. Again, know your audience. Even if you are the audience, know the people you're talking to and understand how that's going to work. So let's talk about types of conventions and conferences. So this is where we could talk about steampunk and anime and fantasy and sci-fi and literary and Renaissance fairs and all that. let's just do a quick rundown of what everybody's been into, and I'll throw mine out here real quick. Definitely a lot of steampunk ones, literary and sci-fi and comic book conventions, and what else have I gone to? Renaissance fairs for a couple decades. And what about you, Tara? And then we'll break down what we like about each type.
Yeah. So I've been to anime conventions. I've been to local Comic-Cons.
Mm-hmm.
And Awesome Con up in DC, which is certainly not San Diego Comic-Con, but it's not a local Comic-Con. It's probably as big as I really want to go to, but it's bigger. And to GalaxyCon again, it's a hybrid.
I like GalaxyCon.
Comic and fandom. Been to some steampunk conventions, some fantasy sci-fi conventions.
Something Tara and I have both been to. It's almost like a craft fair. It's outside in your little pop-up tent, and you set up your table, and you're on the lawn. And those are kind of nice, too, because you're outside. It has a totally different feel. Yeah. What about you, Robert? What kinds? Oh, I'm sorry, Tara.
I was just going to say, for conferences, I've been to literary conferences. The one I attended last week online was publishing, i.e. specifically publishing conference. And then I've also, with that, there's been kind of the SCBWI conferences, which is the...
Breaking down acronyms are
Society
fun.
for Children's Writers and Illustrators.
Yes.
Which is specifically for children through YA, publishing, writing, editing, snobs. I want to get into it at one point here that some of these conferences especially, not conventions so much, but with conferences, you need to be careful. Some of them are very, very elitist, where it's like traditionally published is the only thing they recognize. Then ones like the one I was at last week, which was very much, hey, you're doing this self-publishing? Hey, here's this. Oh, you're doing this through a small press? Here's this. Hey, you want to get an agent? Here's how we can help you get an agent. I mean, there's different ones. So if you go to one and you're like, ooh, I am not comfortable here, don't think that they're all like that. You just need to find one that you fit better and that fits what you want to do better.
What about you, Robert? What kinds have you been to?
Conference-wise, really the only conference I go to is Imaginarium, which is a writers' conference in Kentucky. And they sort of cover Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio authors. And they say it's part convention because you can set up a table and exhibit there, but the only people shopping are other authors and publishers and editors. So we're all just kind of picking up each other's book, seeing what's going on. Really, it's about the panels and about the learning and the making those connections. Great place to find an editor or a small press publisher, which is, I know what a lot of people do there. And so that's the only real conference I do. Convention-wise, everything from MarsCon, which was a couple thousand people, I think, up to, and that was sort of a fan convention, like a fantasy sci-fi fan convention. I do comic and game conventions with about 30,000 to 40,000 people, all the way up to Gen Con, which is 75 to 80,000 people as a gaming convention. And then occasionally I used to do FairyCon, which was mostly a music and art convention. And then the Oddmalls here in Ohio, which are definitely alternative, geeky, crafty art, like art shows, but they're indoors. At least the ones I do are indoors. They do some outdoor ones. I don't do them because, again, water, rain, moisture, books don't match. But they've got music going, and they sometimes have panels going. So it's this weird hybrid thing.
No.
But, yeah, lots of comic book conventions, lots of gaming conventions, and then some other little anime and art kind of stuff.
Now, here's two fun, different ones that I've been to. Conferences. I've been to a pet supply and fish conference. when I worked in the pet industry. And I've also been to a BDSM convention. That was actually the second convention I ever went to. The first one was Necrocon, was my first one ever. And my second one was a BDSM convention.
Yeah.
And
I actually totally blocked Wicked Fair out of my
There we go. See, and it's amazing because it's not, besides the activities, it's really no different from any other convention I've been to. And everything we've said still applies to that. You know, it fits well. And Flossie says, I love to go to a Star Wars event. Now, I've never been to a Star Wars convention because I don't think they have them because it's owned by Disney now and before Lucasfilm.
Star Wars Celebration. It's a huge one. It happens at Disney.
Right.
But it's a huge Star Wars convention.
I tell you, some of my favorites, I mentioned craft fair type situations. I went to a Comic-Con, and this is where I got to talk to the most big names and interview them on Talk of the Tavern, including a couple of the folks from Guardians of the Galaxy.
Nice.
You know, some big cosplay stars and that sort of thing. At Mysticon, I had a lot of access to different people where I could talk to them and interview them. And Sean Gunn, thank you, Andrea. Sean Gunn, and also, what's her name that was in Doctor Who and Guardians of the Galaxy? I'm ashamed that I forget Amy Pond's.
Karen Hallion?
That's it.
No.
Yes,
Is that it?
I think so. Karen is the first name. What's this last?
Karen
It's
Gillan.
not Hallion.
Gillian.
It's what?
Yes, thank you, Tom.
Gillian, right.
But anyhow.
The other one's an artist for Disney.
Right. There you go. And Andrew's, Karen Gillian. And I have met some really big names that I've heard go, oh my God, are we done yet? Can they stop touching me? I want to go back to my room. And I've seen others who are absolute delights. And I've seen some like, I don't shake hands, I don't touch people, but they're still a delight because they've just had the experience of the second person in line picking their nose and then stepping forward to shake their hand, and they're like, no.
Yep, not gonna do that. Well, I think that also brings up something that bears talking about is con crud is what we call it. Con crud is that after doing a convention, 2 or 3 days where you don't sleep a lot, you don't eat like you should, you're certainly probably not working out like you normally do, and meeting all of these people, you're wearing yourself thin, so your immune system goes down, and you've got, even if you've only got 5,000 people at that convention, that's 5,000 people that you weren't around before, and you're picking up all their germs, shaking hands and people coughing and just being tired. So most people that do conventions, and do a lot of them, end up sick for the next 2 or 3 days after it. So something that I've seen a lot of people do, even before COVID, was the elbow bump instead of shaking hands. Shaking hands at most conventions, at least the ones I do, is a no-no anymore. You just don't do it. Even before COVID. And after COVID, heck no, I'm not shaking your hand. I'm sorry.
Hand sanitizer is everywhere.
Yeah, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. So I totally get, like, guests not wanting to shake.
Hey, Robert.
All the hundreds of people in line.
A fun thing here, I remember one convention, there was one young lady, her shtick, her thing during that convention was licking anybody's helmet that wore a helmet. Yeah, there's a fun thing. And Andrea throws in the 1-2-3 rule: at least 1 shower, 2 meals, and 3 hours of sleep a day.
Oh, if you can function on 3 hours of sleep, more power to you. But yes, one shower at least a day, please.
So I've got a favorite con story in my head. Do you guys have a favorite con story?
Along with showering? Yes.
Well, no, not necessarily with showering, just in general, like your favorite experience at a convention.
Oh, I was going to go with my most awkward experience.
Yeah, I was going to go with my worst experience at a convention. I can flip gears. I can go my favorite experience at a convention.
You can tell them both, and I'll tell mine when you guys are done. Who wants to go first? Go ahead, Robert.
My worst experience at a convention was actually probably Gen Con, although I can probably pull multiple if I think about it. This young lady had the hots for my assistant, who happened to be my brother-in-law. And she started hanging around on day one. And she was one of those people, because it does go both ways. You will have ladies following guys around.
Yeah,
now, it's not as much of a safety issue, although he was actually worried with some of the things that she said that she was going to drug him and put him in the trunk of her car. Like, this was a legit fear that my adult brother-in-law had. So she's coming around, and he ended up having to leave and hide because he just didn't want to deal with this lady. And on day one, it's okay. She's nice. On day three, she's not showered. There is a funk in my booth when she walks in. I don't know where it's coming from until she reaches over and picks something up and leaves like grease you would get from a cheeseburger grill, like that thick of a grease on one of the leather masks that I used to make, and just handprints all over the tables. And she's like, "Where's I'm not gonna say his name, but I'll say Bob, because that's not his name." I'm like, "Oh, he got really sick and he had to go home early, so he's not gonna be around the." She's like, "Oh," she shrugs and walks away. So, but then I had greasy handprints everywhere. It's like, wash your hands, take a shower, people. That's not cool. My best probably convention experience is meeting those people, like the celebrities, because I don't have the time or the money to go wait in line with all the other hundreds of people to meet a celebrity. So when they stop by my booth to look at stuff, that's really kind of cool. The problem with me is I am not good at recognizing that person is a celebrity. So there was a nice, well-spoken gentleman at my booth, a little bit older, and he's talking to me about books and about conventions. Everybody around me is like freaking out and getting out their phone and taking pictures, and I'm just talking to him like, that's a normal guy, cool. And he shakes my hand, he's like, "It's really nice talking to you, Robert," and he heads off to a panel. And I have to lean over, I'm like, who was that? That must have been somebody. And it's my friend next to me, my friend I had made at that convention. And she's like, "You idiot. That was Billy D. Williams, Lando Calrissian from Star Wars." So, there you go.
Tara, what about you?
So we'll start with my worst experience, and that is laying in my hotel room, having to listening to, the intimate party next door, getting very, very loud.
I remember the story the next morning.
So, I mean, it was the slap, boo, and I was like, what the heck? My kids slept through it, thank God, because they were young at the time, and I didn't want to have to explain what was going on next door, but...
Intense patty cake.
The knocking at my door, and I'm like, "Dudes, go away. And I ended up calling and the desk, and they moved rooms the next night for me. They said, "Yeah, we'll put you up farther. We didn't realize that you didn't know not to be on that floor." And I'm like, I had no clue. Best experience. There's so many good experiences. So I'm going to go with this one, and hopefully Travis will recognize it. But there's times, when you're crammed in at some of the smaller conventions, and my booth, and, we were kind of between a table at the end, a table here. And we're at the end of this hallway that dead ended, and people were like bypassing.
This is one of the stories I was going to tell.
Do you want me to stop?
No, go on. I'll add to it afterwards.
And so... the three people at these tables, my kids sitting across from me on the floor, having a time, and kept going out and buying things so we could decorate our little end of the hall here. But we started playing a game with each other, and it was, when people did come down and kind of peruse down, we played this little game of, mentioning something about what the person was wearing and making a joke of it. And, you made friends that I'm still friends with today.
So to build on that story, this was MarsCon quite a few years ago. It was the first year Tara and I met. We also met Wynn Mercer. Now, later, the experience Tara is talking about turned into us publishing our own card game called Awkward Compliments. Because we didn't get a lot of traffic, So I went, let's try to build on each other's compliments. Like, you'll hear me start one, somebody else say something else to add to it, and somebody else add to that. And it became such a fun game. Later it warped into, maybe we can give them a compliment that's just odd or awkward. Like, you have beautiful eyebrows. It's just kind of a weird compliment. Actually, not so much nowadays, but it was 7 years ago or whenever this was. It wasn't necessarily a common compliment. And yeah, that was a favorite. Adding to that, it was the next year. We were in the same corner, but not as quite in the dark, shadowy part. And there was a young author directly across from us who was amazing at reaching out and connecting with people walking by. And that's Michael Thompson, who has been on Right Night many, many times. And we're still friends. And it was a delight watching him operate. It was a delight offering him advice and him listening and taking it. And we still communicate on a regular basis. Now, one other thing, besides those, I'm adding to this, is there was one convention where Andrea and I were working it, and we were working the CG photo booth. And they had the big names coming in and doing pictures with fans and whatnot. And William Kirchner, the gentleman who played, I believe it was Bomber in The Hobbit, was there.
Oh,
and
wow.
We got photos with him, and we went up to his booth later to say, ooh, sorry, cat. We went up to his booth to say how great it was, and Andrea says, so that song, Misty Mountains of Home in the movie, did you sing it? And he bursts into song and starts wooing Andrea. And he sings this in this beautiful baritone. Andrea says it's Biffer, not Bomber. My bad. Afterwards when he finishes, I stand there and I cross my arms. Andrea's melting next to me. I'm like, well, somebody's getting lucky tonight. It's and now later we also had him on Talk of the Tavern. We brought him back on for an hour live interview with him, and he was a delightful gentleman. I highly recommend if you have a chance to meet him or just watch his movies. Definitely do that.
There you go.
Okay, so do we have any closing thoughts on this topic? You want to wrap up your thoughts on conferences and conventions? Sure. Tara, can we start with you?
Sure. Find one and go. Dress up. Have fun. Take your friends with you. It's much more fun in a group. But just don't be afraid. And meet people and say hello to people. And go to them. They're great.
Robert?
I'm going to take the other side of it because she handled, go to them. Be a fan, be a patron. For those of you that are working at conventions, that have set up as authors or panelists or artists or whatever, go as your own PR person. Go and pass out business cards. Go and meet people. But most importantly, even if you are the most introverted person in the world, even if you are terrified of talking to people, you gotta find a personality in yourself that can talk to people. There's so many conventions where I see people having a bad weekend, having a bad time, and you look at what they're doing and they've closed themselves off. They're sitting behind their booth, writing on their laptop or reading a book or sketching and not making even eye contact. You don't have to carry on a conversation. Make eye contact with the people that come up to see you, nod, answer their questions, but give them the same attention that they're giving you. Now, if they're a creeper following you around, find a buddy and shut that down. But you will do so much better. You will have so much more fun and sales at a convention if you embrace the fact it's about people and you connect with those people, because otherwise you can stay at home and sell on your website.
I'm going to kind of build on what you both said there. And Andrea did throw in the chat, don't be a creeper and shower. Earlier she mentioned find a buddy if you have a creeper. And realize some creepers might just be, they just don't know how to approach you to say, hello, I love what you do, or I love that outfit, or I love whatever. if you want to talk to somebody, whether they're in costume or whatever, just find that one thing about them that you can compliment. Not like awkward compliments like Tara and I did in the corner. But, how'd you make that, or where'd you buy that, or that is an amazing button you're wearing on your vest. Whatever it is, these folks, whether they're awkward introverts like a lot of us are, or whether they're outgoing extroverts, they're going to be happy to talk to you as long as they're not running from point A to point B. And they're thrilled to share and tell you how they did it. But also I'll recommend is a lot of people do go to these for company. So if somebody latches on to you and all they want to do is talk, they don't want to hear your side, they don't want to hear anything about you, they want somebody to listen. Have the patience to nod and smile and listen, and have a way out. Have a plan to get out, even if it's as simple as, part of me, I need to step away and refresh myself.
Yep.
You don't have to don't tell them I'm going to get food. They might be like, I'll go with you. Don't tell them you're going to the bathroom. You're like, part of me, I have to step away. Oh, Andrea suggests ask to take a photo of a costume. They will pose. They'll work into the costume and want it photographed well. Or they put a lot of work into the costume, want it photographed well. That's something else. There is the courtesy of if you're going to take a picture. A handful of years ago, it became very common practice, ask first. Now, this isn't necessarily taking a crowd shot across the room, but if you're photographing somebody, give the high sign, hold up the camera, make the clicky motion, or speak to them, let them know I'm interested, because there are people that will say no. And yes, you might go back to your friends going, well, why are they dressed like this here if they don't? Doesn't matter why. They don't want it. And understand and respect that, and don't take it personally, because it's not about you. It's about them. Okay, let me wrap this up and let everybody know you can email us at rightnightshow@gmail.com. That's rightnightshow@gmail.com. Right like writing, night like the night, with N-I-G-H-T, no K. show@gmail.com. You can let us know topics you'd like to hear, or let us know your thoughts about this. You can also send us messages or birthday wishes for friends or for yourself. It doesn't matter. I want to thank everybody who hung out in chat, throwing their comments. Andrea, our moderator for the evening, thank you very much for doing all you did here, and for everybody else who popped in to say hello and hang out with us, and all the support that you guys give to the podcast and the live stream, because we do live stream the recordings of our podcast here at twitch.tv/Travis Tavern Talk, and we love each and every one of you that show up for this. So, let me get some outro music. You guys have a great night, and join us again for Right Night. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you for joining author Travis I. Sivart and the other writers, content creators, and all-around amazing people for our discussion here on Right Night. Join us again soon, and until you do, make sure you create with passion, enjoy the journey, and remember, every night can be right night.
At Capella University, education is as smart as the world around us. With the FlexPath format, you can take classes at your own pace, set your own deadlines, and even leverage your previous experience to move faster. Now that's smart. Learn more at capella.edu.